I'm John Wirtz. I'm vetting committee chair of the Montgomery County Tea Party. Dale Fessenden, Brian Crumby, Ken Vaughn, Dennis Tibbs, Pat Tibbs, and Larry Rogers. And so what we'll do is go ahead, Billy, with your opening statement, up to 5 minutes. Pat's going to have a timer right there for you.
Added pressure. I guess it's the basic intro. My name's Billy Ballard. I'm a lifetime resident of Montgomery County. I'm a 1987 graduate of Conroe High School. Back in the days when we only had a couple high schools. In 92, I graduated Sam Houston State University. I have my bachelor's degree in law enforcement police science. The last year they actually offered that degree. Now it's just general criminal justice. I did start off at A&M that first semester, but realized what I wanted to do, and that degree wasn't there, so came back over. In 90, I was 21 and decided this is what I wanted to do. So actually, I was working construction in summers, put the money away, and went to the Night Academy and got myself certified in 1990. And that's when I started learning. I was out on weekends riding with highway patrolmen. I had my commission carried through the Constable's office in Conroe. And I got my experience serving civil papers, serving subpoenas, writs, evictions. I bailiffed for the original Grady Spikes several times. It was not uncommon to be in there. And so it was quite poetic. In 93, he married my wife. So, it's one of those type of things. I can't go without saying we've been married now 22 years. I have a 21-year-old daughter at Texas A&M that graduates in the spring with her degree in political science and a certificate in comparative political studies. So and she's a little political guru. She's interned with the congressman here one semester, but she interned with the congressman in College Station, Brian, Bill Flores, and she just enjoys that office and the involvement there. And she enjoys the conversation she has with him. She's learned a lot about national government just through him. She often refers to him as like a second grandfather. He's a great guy. And then I have a son who's 17, graduates high school this year, and wants to pursue broadcasting. He's become quite the video guru, interviewing everything. The guy records these political interviews, and he is. I don't know whether he's going to be the far right one of Colbert or the far other end of O'Reilly, but he is quite the sarcastic humorist in all of it, and his political science teacher now is getting quite the enjoyment out of it. But in 90, when I started at the constable's office, I saw a constable there and then who was heavily involved in his community. It was not uncommon you walk in and the mayor of Conroe might be there, a POA president, and he was involved in here. He would talk with them, and he knew what was going on in the community. And that's what I saw in a constable's office, because the precinct level instead of the county level, you got a direct involvement, and you can be involved and invested in that community. But that community was also invested in us. It was only a 5 or 6 person department, so there's not really much room to grow. And in that day, it was not a 24-hour agency. In 93, early part of 93, he got a new position, and he called me and goes, "I want you to be this person." And I became the evening shift person. And it was quite a shock. Dispatchers, patrolmen, everybody were like, "There's a constable out at 10 o'clock at night." And they had no idea. But I got, he still had that involvement. I was in there in the communities in Precinct 2, and that's what I envisioned for Precinct 1. I came over to the Sheriff's Department in 96. I worked patrol till 2002 when I was promoted to an investigator. And I have evolved. It was a strange world in 02 when I got to detectives. I was the only person that could format a floppy disk. I could attach something to an email, insert a photo in a Word document, so I was a new breed of detective then. And that has parlayed me into pretty much a technology-based investigator. I've now been moved over to the crime lab, and I handle a lot of the digital evidence. Therefore, I spend a lot of time testifying in court on digital evidence also. And it is a world that has grown and is continuing to grow. I can tell you in '93, my wife and I shared a cell phone. Now I can take my cell phone out and create a PowerPoint and show it off of my cell phone. So the world has evolved. And that's what I think I bring. I bring a well-rounded person to that office.
Thank you. Okay, so this is a process, we'll just go around the table, Q&A. What, you guys, a lot of, I guess several of the candidates have similar backgrounds. What do you say separates you from the other candidates in this race? And I believe there's 4 right now, right?
As far as I know, 4. I've heard a rumor of a 5th, but we had a 5th introduce himself at one event, so we have, I believe we probably have a 5th now. But as far as that, I bring the college, I bring the education level. I also feel like I bring the roundedness. I have been in a constable's office. I have bailiffed at a JP court. I have served evictions, writs. I know that end, and that's the primary duty of a constable's office. That is his main responsibility, mandated by court, by law. But Precinct 1 has a different, in Montgomery County, our constables have evolved into different things, just depending on the area and the precinct, and probably how the Commissioner's Court has delved out other responsibilities. But Precinct 1 also has Lake Conroe. They have 6 officers on Lake Conroe and boats patrolling Lake Conroe. And that's a big, big responsibility. On the prosperity end of the county, I mean, it is a draw to that edge of the county, and it affects property values, businesses, their income, the residents. All that area hinges a lot off of the lake. They provide security to the Willis Independent School District. They have 6 officers there that provide security for those schools. And that school district is now at 7,100 students. They're planned to grow, well, they're projected to grow to 10,000 within the next 10 years. And with, I know most of you have heard the development that's moving that way with Hughes. I live off of 830, and I know there's a huge parcel that's now been purchased and getting ready to develop. So that area is getting ready to explode with growth, business-wise and community-wise. And I believe the constable's office in there is going to be present, and if they're directly involved with that community, those businesses, those people, they can be ahead of the growth and be there to facilitate that growth. It's not government's job to control that growth. It's the government's more or less to facilitate it. I mean, it's growth. It's going to grow. So it's our country. I mean, people buy houses, build houses. Businesses are allowed to grow. So.
Okay.
Okay. A lot of things with the so to speak anti-police sentiment around the country, and a lot of the mass shootings and so forth. A lot of question of who is your boss. Now, of course, if you're elected constable, you are elected by the people and you're accountable to the people. But who in the command structure is your boss? Who gives you direction? Who do you answer to when they say jump, you say how high? Who's that?
It's the voter. I mean, the people that hired me. Those voters are the ones, ultimate people I'm responsible to. And as an elected official, there's certain things. The elected official no longer is really turning in a time sheet and hours he spends because he's responsible to the community. He's not responsible to a supervisor or anybody else. If he's only going to the office 4 hours a week, it's the voters that should be seeing that and going, we don't want this guy. But in that, it's his devotion to the public that gets their vote. And I've had several people ask me, are you ready for that? I said, yes. I said, because in supervision, this is the way I see it. The only way to really supervise an agency is to be an active participant in that agency. I told them, I said, you know what? You're going to see me out on a boat. There's no way I can supervise and run an agency if I'm not hands-on with that agency. And to be out there, how am I supposed to be able to evaluate an employee's performance if I'm not involved with it? They run mental health for the whole county. And I've talked to those officers, and they run an awesome responsibility, because it's a balance between government and healthcare and the balances of private information and court responsibilities and that. And I said, you know what, I've got to be there working with you. You're going to see me come out in the middle of the night when you have to go and address a mental health situation at the hospital or on a scene helping another agency. I have a strong belief in supervision by participation. It's the only way to effectively manage the taxpayers' money also. Because I can't go into Commissioner's Court and say, yes, we have enough money, or we need more money, if I'm not involved. And I can speak from the heart saying, yes, we need this, because I've been there and I've seen this and I've worked with it, and I know we need it.
Okay, would you please give me your take on Governor Abbott's letter to Dallas County Sheriff John Davis?
Can you save it next time, right?
Okay, well, it'll be a follow-on to this.
Okay.
So, is your mandate the law, or is it what the people want? So, I mean,
You've got to work with
so
it.
let me finish my question. So, I mean, the Republican Party has a lot of, they say there's a lot of the rule of law. So I guess I'd like to get your understanding of what the rule of law means, and is that, how far do you take that? I mean, do you take it to its logical end, and where does that go?
I mean, you're talking about this as far as this code of criminal procedure, penal code, what we deal with every day.
Right.
It's a black and white rule book, but you have to get, you guide that with what courts are giving you as far as interpretation. But the Republican Party, and I mean, there's a lot of infighting, as you know, and I don't necessarily deal with. My belief is I deal with the rule book. You know, I've always been a rule of law. I've debated the law several times with prosecutors on certain decisions that we have had to make in court case, you know, in investigations. But I'm a firm believer in the rule of law. I mean, when you have a law book a law written in black and white that you can fall back upon, I believe that is the biggest strength. In my bag.
So in other words, you treat everybody the same way.
Yes.
Do you think you can write a law that kind of deals with 13 million people? You think it's possible to do that? There's 13 million people in Texas. Can you write laws that can?
25.
Okay, 25 million.
As far as, you mean a crime, a criminal offense, I mean, writing a law that legislates something that deals with 13 million people at one time.
Can you put 25 million people in one box?
I don't think, it would be a very hard sell, but, you know, our laws, you can watch them evolve. The sad thing is that most of the time I see poorly written laws that people try to, you know, it's more of a reactionary government move to, you know, just to try to, I guess, they react to an incident and try to write a law in haste that's poorly written. But I believe if time was spent, you could probably accommodate it, but it's really hard to accommodate that many people in one law.
Okay.
All right. In your questionnaire, you talk about the Fourth Amendment considerations have evolved to protect individual privacies.
Yes.
Can you explain a little bit about that? Maybe give an
I
example.
mean, what I've seen,
Yeah, just give an example of what you mean by that.
well, and with the electronic end, I can tell you how my job has evolved. When I first started on the electronic end and I started doing computer-based evidence, cell phones were rare. And there was no interface, there was no way to actually analyze cell phone evidence but with your thumbs. And the poor phones there were the 9-digit keypad. And like we have evolved now. Up until about 4 or 5 years ago, court cases allowed the officer complete access to everything that was in that phone, just because he had you detained. And in that, I saw a lot of agencies that were buying, you know, the cell phone. We have that technology to actually download the entire contents of a phone, including its deleted information, such as that. And there were a lot of times people were using that on detained persons. And that to me was like comparing the proverbial Terry Frisk pat-down for safety to a body cavity search. They're two different animals. And I often said to people, I said, listen, this is going to change. This will change. And you don't want to be the court case that changes the law. But we saw that, you know, and I'm going to say it was 2 to 3 years ago, the law changed to now where, you know, to analyze that cell phone, you have to have a search warrant with probable cause or the consent of the owner. And that's where it should have been, because that phone is no longer a cell phone. It is now a form of communication, correspondence. It developed into so much more, and our laws have changed to accommodate that.
Okay, so are you saying that that right didn't exist before?
It existed, but the law didn't support it. It was like the technology was growing faster than the law, and the law had to catch up with it. And that happens so often.
Well, just real quickly, those 6 deputies that work for the school district, are they 100% dedicated to the school?
Yes. I believe they have a lieutenant, a sergeant, 4 deputies assigned to
So if
them.
you have a wreck on the freeway, can one of them go there or not?
Yes.
They
And they often do. I mean, if they're close, because I have to drive through their school
Yeah.
zones every day, and I have seen them there at a wreck.
Okay, that's good. I was gonna ask you about the comment on car allowances. How are the cars paid for now? I mean, and
Well, back when I was at the Constables, everyone was under a car allowance.
you owned your own car?
Yes, you owned your own car, you paid your own insurance. I paid $250 a month in car insurance back then. I had a liability policy that covered my car as an emergency vehicle. And then I had regular insurance for my car. And so that little $900 a month I had, $250 went right out the window, and then my car note. So, then what was left was my gas. And my gas card, I got a gas card, so I could keep it all separate and then, actually manage my money and keep it for taxes. And they cut me off the first month. They go, "You're using too much gas." And I had to explain to them, I said, no, I'm patrolling here, I'm driving every day. I'm driving a tank of gas every day. But the county is slowly moving away from that, and I think there's a deadline, and I think it was 17 or 18. They want them all off of car allowance.
So that's countywide, all offices?
I don't know if all offices, but I know the deputies. And I don't know about elected officials, I don't know how that lays out. But I know that they're trying to move all those deputies off of the car allowance, and I think that's a great thing. It's just so much of a less of a headache to have to deal with, as far as, especially the end of year taxes, because that shows up as income.
A headache on the deputy's part or the?
I believe it's a
department's part?
horrible headache on the deputy's part,
Okay.
because you have a choice of either showing your mileage or showing your expenses, and, that's never a win-win on either part. And then the fact that, if you're a deputy and your transmission goes out, I mean, that's a great expense, or you have to buy a set of tires every year.
And do other counties do it that way, or do you know?
I'm not sure on other counties, but I know our county's moving away from that. It's such a big plus.
Is it something that they just, in recent history, introduced, or has it been like that forever?
Well, it's been, when I started in '90, all of them were under everybody was under a car allowance. But I know, it's just, and then everybody had different cars and, such as that. I'm full forward for officers being able to have a county car, and you take that burden off of them.
So if your car belongs to a county, are you less restrained when it comes to hot pursuit? You can wreck all our cop cars.
You're saying,
Well, if you're in a hot pursuit and it's your own car, and you know you gotta pay to fix the damage.
see, that's how I started, so that's the way I've always driven. That's why I think I got the safe driving, I have the safe driving award so many years, because I was just driving my car. But yet, if it's a county car, when you have, this is one thing I've found over the years, when you have an officer assigned to a car, that car's taken care of.
And he gets to take it home, or do you?
Yes, that car officer takes care of that car. Now, when you have pool cars, typically they're not really taken care of. You can ask any HPD officer that.
Yeah.
When they go in and pick out a car every night, it's a different car, those cars are not taken care of. But when you have an officer assigned to a car, they take pride in that car. It's some ownership, it's just somewhat of an ownership.
Okay.
Everybody say it. Jabs up. What is your position on the constable's office taking money from the federal government?
I can give you the comparison of sending our daughter to college. When we started looking at costs of college, and my wife and I dabbled in photography. We started our own photography business to help us pay for these expenses, because saddling our daughter with a whole lot of government loans was not what we wanted to do. Sort of make her a slave to the federal government after a while. But I've never been a proponent of shopping around for free money. Just because the money's there and available doesn't mean we need to go apply for it and try to get a grant and then put ourselves under the restrictions of having the federal government watch what we do and how we spend the money and how we use it. Now, but I'm a favor of advancing technology. Let's look at the body cameras. Yes, I can tell you in probably 94, I was working at the constable's office. I saved my own money up and bought my own camera for my car. I had the VHS-C camera in my car with the body mic. I was the only one around doing it besides the highway patrol who had theirs, but I had that in the car and I utilized it as a great tool.
Did you fill out the FAFSA form?
For my daughter?
Mhm.
Yes, we did.
Okay.
I think almost everybody has to fill that form out. I know we haven't done it on my son yet. We've done all the other stuff, but yes, we did fill one out on my daughter. Because I remember we had to wait for tax returns to come in. But I believe she got grants and stuff that came in off of that FAFSA at A&M. Made her eligible for some. She's also hearing impaired, so that threw her in a different whole category. But, I lost my place here. But on the, taking the body cameras, I believe that now, if we can get those instituted, that'd be a great asset to every officer, training-wise, and if they learn to use it a proper tool. I am for being able to get some money to help subsidize, because it's an often you have to build the infrastructure to support it right off the bat. And it's going to expense, it's a one-time expense to get the infrastructure built, but if we're not going to be able to pay for it out of our budget, we've got to find a way to do it. It's imperative, I believe, to law enforcement.
Okay, 12 deputies and 11 supervisors. How many administrative people?
Oh, what numbers are you going off of?
You had over here 21 deputies and supervisors.
So this is the way I understand the department to be laid out, because I've looked at the budget and personnel and such. There's 35 employees at the constable's office in Precinct 1. You have 2 clerical positions. Then you have the constable, his chief deputy, and a captain. And I believe those 3 are out of the civil service and everybody else is in. They have 5 lieutenants and 5 sergeants.
That seems kind of strange.
Seems a little heavy. I don't know how it's developed in that way. I probably understand that you have the lake, and I don't know how I haven't studied how it's funded, if it's funded through SJRA or how that's done. But, like Willis ISD, that's under a contract, and they probably mandate that there's a lieutenant, a sergeant, and 4 deputies. And that seems a little top-heavy too, but I mean, that's the way they wanted it, and that's what they were paying for, what they contracted to the county, and then so be it. But it's not the proportions of supervisors to deputies I'm used to dealing with at the sheriff's department. Our lieutenants are over a whole patrol district, and they have several sergeants under them.
Right.
It seems to me everything works in a pyramid type.
And do you know what the position pays?
I have, the way I've looked at this, there are sergeants getting various different pays, and there are lieutenants getting various different pays. Some are higher than others, some are
But
disproportionate.
being the head constable.
At the constable salary?
Yeah.
I believe it's like around 110. I'm not sure how much his seniority or years of service
Right.
work into it, but that's approximately where it is.
Right.
And I don't know if that includes his car allowance or what.
You've got, you were in patrol for 6 years and 13 years as a detective.
And I'll hold that next go around, or just about out of time. Because I got to follow on to
Yes,
that.
okay.
How would you adjust this department then, being top-heavy?
It's something I'd like to sit down with commissioners to find out if we could adjust where this proportion of a command structure falls. I mean, it's just, and there's so much more service that probably could be done to that community. But it's something to find out how that is structured as far as that proportion, how it lays out, what is a contract and what's not a contract. Because if it's a contract, you're almost stuck within the contract. But like Willis ISD, with the growth they're about to see, the school district's going to have to increase the amount of officers they have just to keep a adequate ratio.
What percentage growth is that?
Well, predicting, almost 3,000 students in the next 10 years is
Is
what
that
they're,
CISD
that's Willis ISD.
or Willis ISD?
Yeah, that's just their growth, because they provide that security. They're adding another elementary school and a considerable amount of campus space to their high school.
Yeah, we didn't evaluate that in our last go-around. Do you know what percentage that growth rate is? Because a lot of times we see these school
Studies,
growth rates studies, and we
I-
evaluated CISD demographic study, it was this thick.
right.
And what we determined was they only needed one school when they put a bond out there for 5. Obviously, it passed because it's all about the children.
Right. I don't know the exact number. Now, my wife is a kindergarten teacher in that district. I know last year she had 24 students in her class. 9 were girls. But that district, and it was across the board. All the kindergarten classes were at that level. And that's without these new developments coming in. So it's going to experience a growth. Now, as far as the rate, I couldn't even testify to it. Yes.
You think money's a fix for that, or
No.
to hire more teachers, or what?
What I saw that probably a need for another elementary school, because I can't see them forcing portables into those schools for security-wise. I can't see you keeping a secure school campus when you've got elementary-age students in portables that are not detached from the school. And then I wouldn't even fathom if there's a legal requirement as far as the ratio of students per restroom. Because, if you're throwing in portables, you're not getting restrooms in that. But from what I have, because my son is there, and I'm often around those schools. I do career days and everything else in those schools, and I have seen the growth and overcrowding. They're not near as overcrowded as Montgomery ISD, because about 6-7 years ago I started officiating football, just as a pastime in the afternoons. And that district has grown beyond belief, but I think they might have gotten behind the curve.
Okay, back to my question on chain of command. I'd like to get your take on Governor Abbott's letter to Dallas County Sheriff Valdez. Sheriff Valdez had a unilaterally enacted policy of refusing to automatically detain all criminal immigrants. And Governor Abbott wrote, amongst other things, that sanctuary city policies like those promoted by your recent decision to implement your own case-by-case immigrant detention plan will no longer be tolerated in Texas. So what enforcement power, what influence, what authority does Governor Abbott have over Dallas County Sheriff Valdez?
Well, I know he has a financial purse string over a lot of our state, as far as money that could be dealt out to him. But he is the governor of the state, and as far as I remember, it's the United States of America. It's just my little personal belief. And I'm a proponent of states' rights. As far as what rights are given the government and what they're taking now, I've never been a proponent of it. I'm a firm believer in our state should be governing our state. Now, the sad thing is you come into this quandary of federal law and immigration and trying to enforce it on the state level. You're at the beck and call of what the federal government's going to do with it.
Okay, but the heart of my question is not the federal government. The heart of my question is Governor Abbott. This just happened to be an instance of sanctuary cities and immigration, but I don't care if it's the color you paint your police cars.
Right.
Okay, what is Governor Abbott, what authority does he have to dictate what goes on in Constable Precinct 1's office in Montgomery County?
Well, as far as he is the governor of the state of Texas, unless we're getting a contradictory from the attorney, Dan Patrick, because isn't Dan Patrick, also involved in that, but I believe he's actually the leader of the state of Texas in as far as our government, but we're still confined by the law and what the law gives us. I would say, to me, yes, you said sanctuary city, it's not the issue, but It is it's an awful quandary as far as what, but I mean, as far as the governor, yes, he's the governor, but believe me, if he was imposing that, you know, I needed to be arresting illegals, I mean, or enforcing DWI laws to a, you know, a further extent, as long as I'm not violating the law, you know, I may have to address that.
Are you familiar with Sheriff Gage's letter that's on the sheriff's website?
That he's not
On
supporting.
gun confiscation.
Yes, and so if the federal government or if the federal government wants us to confiscate guns, I would never be a proponent of that, no.
But do you take the same position with respect to Governor Abbott? Anyway, so pass that
yes,
on.
I would not, I would say yes.
You wouldn't be a proponent of it, but would you act on it if federal government said you need to go in and confiscate guns?
Never, no. I am a member of the NRA. I mean, I am a full proponent of gun ownership. Gun, I mean, my kids know where every gun in my house is. But I am a proponent of gun ownership. I'm a proponent of our rights as they are laid out. Because I think you asked me there about the living document. I am a wholehearted, I wouldn't say student, but I'm a wholehearted believer in the U.S. Constitution. I have my copy in the car. My briefcase for work has my Texas Constitution in it also.
Must be heavy.
No, it is. That big, yes.
So are you familiar with prominent Oath Keepers?
I have read some of their work. I was on their website, and it's some good work. I believe, yes, I do believe it.
So are you a member?
No, I'm not.
Do you know why did you decide not to?
I have a strong belief in joining something because I'm running for office. And you're going to have to go, you have to listen to me on this. I've had people, are you going to join Kiwanis? Are you going to join this? I said, I'm not joining anything right now because I think it's disingenuous to the association or the group.
Well, how long have you known about Oath Keepers?
Well, I found out about after I'd already decided to run.
Okay, so you just recently found out about it?
Well, probably in the last 6 to 8 months, because I started this thing over a year ago.
Okay.
But no, I've read their stuff. I've read the website. And I've looked at the stuff they have on there. I've looked at who's endorsing it and such. But it's just my personal belief. People ask, are you going to join the Fair Association? I've been a member of that for years. I'm not going out and joining Noon Lions or anything like that. Because it's just you could say it's just it's a pet peeve of mine. I refuse to join any groups now that I've started running. I mean, I don't care what the group is, because to me, it's a look as though I'm coming out here just to get your vote.
You belong to the Sheriff and Peace Officers Association?
Which, are you talking about McLean?
No,
Montgomery
not
County
that
Law
one.
Enforcement.
Well, which one are you a member of? I guess
What
that should be a short list.
Yes.
I'm a member of,
Constitutional Sheriff and Peace Officers Association resolution. Kind of like Oath Keepers, huh?
No, not. I mean, it's just like I said, the one up there, I believe there was one that Chief Napolitano about joined. I think it was on there about upholding the Constitution. I mean, I've refused to join anything now that I'm running because I don't want that to be perceived as the reason I joined that group. Do you get what I'm saying?
And it would be, huh?
Yes, that's my rule, that's my personal belief.
How long have you been a member, associate member of the Lake Conroe Area Republican League?
Oh, we joined that, I think we've already renewed for a second time. My wife joined that one, Lake Conroe Area Women. She put me as associate member and I decided to run. Because I know she got involved with their literary stuff and I'm a student, because my wife was a librarian for 5 years with Willis before most districts start getting rid of their librarians.
With Willis School or with Willis County Library?
She was a Willis School librarian.
Okay.
What's your position on open carry?
Well, I've always been a proponent of the concealed carry, and open carry, we were one of the last, we were one of the few states that didn't allow it. Now, I believe it's going to be a strange situation January 1st when all this really starts going. I'm a proponent of it. Now, I also know of the added responsibilities that some people are gonna have to exercise, because I remember in the academy, first off the bat, they made us wear holsters. We weren't carrying guns at first, but they want us to be present of them and understand, I guess your geographical location, I guess is what you could almost say, that you had to be ever present. And I'm hoping that in the training, they're presenting that now that you have it exposed and everybody knows it's there, that you're ever present on your, I guess, situational awareness. I do believe that, we're gonna have some zealots who, on both sides, you've seen the people that say they're gonna call 911 every time they see somebody. They're gonna call out with a person with a gun. I know everybody's seen that through the news. But you're also gonna have some people that are just gonna push it as far as they can. But I believe once eventually there's gonna be a novelty of it, and everybody knows that. You're gonna have people with their tooled leather holsters and every such as that. But I think once the dust settles, it's gonna be a better environment. The concealed,
I was just gonna say, every liberal in this state is gonna be calling in.
yes, they will. And what I feel sorry for is us in law enforcement that are gonna have to deal with that. I hope that people, understand that, when the officer's coming to an incident, he's only being fed what information that dispatcher's getting. And if we've ever played the telephone game, by the time it gets to the officer in the car, it's completely different than what he gets when he gets there. So he's woken up in a different world where we don't know what's going on when we get there. And it's going to be the public understanding that and having to keep that in mind.
Okay. I think we've got enough to finish out, roughly 7 or 8 minutes
Okay.
to finish out.
Real quick, I see that you contributed to Boy Scouts. Were you a Boy Scout?
I was a Boy Scout until Weeblos, and unfortunately my dad was the Weeblos leader. And back then
That's Boy Scouts? Cub
yeah,
Scouts?
we were in Weeblos that transition over to,
Yeah.
and I was just on the edge. I mean, we were going to go to Boy Scouts, and I knew the Boy Scout leader we were going to, but he had a heart attack. And this was in the mid-'70s when it was a devastating deal. I remember him being off work for 3 months. And in that, I fell out of Boy Scouts, and I regretted it to this day. I still have the Boy Scout handbook from back then. And I was a kid that was in the woods every day. I don't know how many, I grew up on the North Loop by where the jail is. My parents bought that house that I moved out of when I got married the day before I was born. And I remember hiking those railroad tracks all the way to Willis several times, but that was in a day when we were free-range children.
Yeah. Well, I was a Boy Scout for a short time. It's a little different Boy Scout group. What I wanted to ask you is your personal feelings about their decision to let engage troop leaders and engage scouts in the organization.
Well, what I saw, in that decision, they made it, what they said is that we can no longer use that as the sole basis to keep somebody out. Now, the beauty about Boy Scouts is you're not confined to one troop. So, when a boy promotes up to and wants to be a Boy Scout, he visits several troops and he finds the one that's the fit for him. And me as a parent, we went and we visited several troops to find one that had the basic.
Your kids are Boy Scouts?
My son is a Boy Scout. He hates Christmas music right now because he turns 18 December 29th. And every bit of that Christmas music is a countdown timer. He is working on his project right now. He's got it set up and he's doing the paperwork to get his project approved. So all this Christmas music is just putting the added pressure on him. So yes, I am a staunch believer in the principles of Boy Scouts. The decision they made, I've always been a proponent that it was an organization that had its standards, and if you didn't like them, you didn't join it. And whenever an organization cowers to other people's beliefs, I liked when we joined, if you were a husband and wife, you could sleep in the same tent. But if you went on a camp out and you were not a married couple, you couldn't sleep in the same tent. And those were strong guidelines that I believed in. And like I said, I've been married 22 years. My parents were married to each other my whole life. So I'm a proponent of family.
What is your knowledge and opinion on the Strong Cities Network?
Well, I can confess to you, when I got this questionnaire is when I started researching it. You know, some things I typically don't hear of because my balance is more or less in the technology and sometimes, you know, the news passes me by unless it hits something that's in my little realm of world, my geekdom. But when I started reading this, and you saw in my answer, when I started researching it, it basically, all I saw was that it was already enacted. But I had never been a proponent of what I read, if it evolved into something more. I believe in information sharing to the fullest. I can tell you, in law enforcement, we all believe in information sharing. We have developed into a network. Well, we've developed a network in this county where we're sharing information daily with other agencies. And if we're able to share information across these larger cities, and it's going to prove fruitful, yes. But if we're moving into an era of law enforcement that's guided by an authority outside our local law enforcement, I don't believe in that, because I'll take you back to college. One of the first courses we learned about Robert Peel. He designed the first modern police department, the London Metropolitan Police Department, and then there's several guidelines he developed. But one thing is, law enforcement is the community, and the community is law enforcement. We're one and the same. Just happens law enforcement is paid to enforce those duties and rights that are incumbent upon us, all of us in the community. Your safety is just as much a responsibility as it is me in law enforcement. It just happens I'm paid to ensure your safety. And in that, I don't believe that anybody else should. I don't like the fact that you have somebody over guiding law enforcement, especially if in this, a think tank out of London, in what I read. But I mean, I can get into Robert Peel for a while.
Okay, so you've been a patrol for 6 years, and you've been a detective for 13 years.
Yes.
And obviously, moving into detective, I would assume, is a little different than patrol. And
Yes.
You said more technical.
Well, mine became more technical.
Yeah, and maybe dress is a little more different than having a uniform.
Yeah, I had to learn how to tie a tie.
Yeah.
I never knew how to tie a tie
So,
until the first day I was a detective.
So, obviously, there's, from a person standpoint that's not in law enforcement, I see a detective as a little more polished, a little more able to communicate.
Refined.
Yeah, a little different than somebody on patrol or just a...
Yeah, I mean, but in law enforcement, we evolve the whole time. And as
Right.
if you are in law enforcement and you are, I guess, growing, you're evolving, and you can't stagnate into one position and hope to fulfill a career in that one position. You have to grow with it.
Right.
And I believe that's what I've done.
Okay.
And I think that's what you're asking.
Yeah, basically that's what I'm asking, but have you thought about the changes that you're going to be making from the standpoint of being in a suit and tie every day and maybe dealing with different category of people than you would be dealing as the head constable of Precinct 1? Do you see a difference, or will there be a difference? Will you be going up or down?
I believe wholeheartedly it's going up. But yes, it is a different environment, because now this is what I've told people, you run that department for the people that voted you in, the constituents of Precinct 1. I'm working for them and guiding that department the best way to represent them and their community. And in that, I'm going to have to deal a lot with the community. I mean, it is a matter of getting out and talking to people and hearing their input. We have an interesting community with it. Sometimes it becomes quite not bipolar, but it's almost a split environment. Something about Lake Commerce splits it in half. And you often hear Willis and Montgomery, Willis and Montgomery, Willis and Montgomery. And it's like it's a border, and there's a gate guard at the bridge that sort of keeps them separate, but they're one and the same. And yes, as a constable, you're going to have to be able to be responsive to both sides of that lake, and responsive to both communities. And it's going to be a different change. But I have tried to be involved in that community as much as I can, and as much as my time allows sometimes. But I believe that my change into that position would do nothing but help that community, because I have a strong desire for that community. My wife is a graduate of Willis High School, and we now purchased the house that she grew up in, the house I picked her up in Dates from. And so, I mean, that's how strong I believe in that community.
Is the shotgun still by the door?
Her dad was not a shotgun owner. When we met, it was just a strange circumstance, and I can tell you the story and you wouldn't believe it. I mean, we were dating, eating lunch every day, and my parents got sick real fast. And we got married between my mom and dad's funerals, because they died 2 months the day apart. So it was we had a roller coaster there, and I think it built us into a strong family unit. I mean,
That's great, that's great. So,
Okay, so
45
you
minutes
got
is up.
time, you got up to 5 minutes closing, unless you want us to keep peppering you with questions, it's up to you.
I've testified many times in court, and I'm used to being peppered with questions. And usually I end up in district court once a month testifying as an expert in what I do. But I really want to thank you for just inviting me. People ask me all the time, are you worried? I said, listen, I've been cross-examined many times. I don't mind talking to anybody. I teach every year at the Citizen Police Academy about the things I do, and they keep telling me I'm the biggest. They love me to come in and talk about it. But I enjoy getting out and talking to anybody and telling the story. I mean, I could tell you war stories, but nobody wants to hear that. People want to hear what's relevant now. What I bring to this is a person who believes in education. I believe if you get an officer and educate them, keep them trained, keep them moving forward, you're going to produce a better work product. You're going to produce a better officer. I know in the Sheriff's Department, we moved to having our patrol officers investigating misdemeanor offenses. It's been done in several counties before, and we moved that way. And what it did is it made our patrol officers better investigators. So now we've got officers coming into and detectives now who have investigated crimes on the street. And so no longer do we have to teach them how to be a detective when they get to detectives. Now they're just investigating a different set of crimes, but they have the background and the training behind them to do that. And they are creating a better work product. And it is a better service to us in detectives that we're getting better help, that we're not having to spend more time training people. And now the public is seeing the benefit of that now. That, those officers that respond to those things are not just a secretary taking a report. They're invested in that offense, that incident that's occurred. And then the detectives that come in are not behind the 8 ball trying to clean up a mess. And I believe that me being involved in this growth in our county's law enforcement will help grow the Constable's office into a department that can handle that. I remember when I started at the Constable's office, I really had very little training in the criminal end. And me being the only guy out at evenings, I had to learn it on my own. But I think I did well with it, and when I moved over to the Sheriff's Department, field training really wasn't that hard a thing. In fact, I became sort of an asset because I was the only patrolman in that area that really knew the civil end. And oftentimes we would get those calls in the middle of the night, about something civil, and every supervisor would, call Ballard and let him answer that. He can answer that really quick. And so I believe my rounded, experience now brings a lot to the table. No, I'm not deficit in one or the other. I believe I bring a rounded environment. I believe that my ideas for supervision, most of you can understand that if you can't do the job, how can you adequately supervise it? How am I supposed to evaluate your job performance if I can't do the job? How am I supposed to evaluate how the department runs if I've never done that before, if I've never served that civil paper, if I've never, conducted that criminal investigation? I've seen how those school districts work. I've been involved with it. I've been involved with the agency because of where I live and basically a wife in the school district. I've seen how that works. I live on Lake Conroe. I've seen how that works. I've got ideas for Lake Conroe. I believe and I will give you this, I believe we need to look at other lakes in this area, in this state, that have this, that what they're doing can help us evolve Lake Conroe into not being the deadliest lake in the state. There are certain things we need to look at other venues and bring those ideas in. I'm a proponent of progressing forward. An agency can't sit still and let the world pass it by. It has to move forward. It can't take a step left or right. You have to have your goal and move straight forward to it.
Okay. Just a quick question, since there's about 30 seconds left.
Okay.
Are we not doing that with the lake right now? Do we not compare against other
I
lake
don't.
authorities? Or
I'm not sure exactly how things are done. I've always been I'm a data guy. I could tell you if you looked at my Dropbox where I have looked at campaigning now and started looking at spreadsheets and stuff. I've always been a data guy. And I believe in going out and researching everything to the fullest to find out which way we need to go.
Why did they say Conroe is the deadliest lake?
From all the news reports, they talk about the deaths on lakes and such, and they took it over a time period showing how many. And I mean, there's different variables in each of these deaths. I mean, versus drownings, versus boating accidents and such as that. But if we could take a positive approach and move towards educating the boaters, because now, I mean, what does it take to get a boat and ride around Lake Conroe? Pretty much access to a boat. I'm no way a boating expert. There's no way in the world you could get me to drive a boat across Lake Conroe at night. I just know I don't have the skill to do such. But I believe if in lake law enforcement, if you're working with those businesses and those communities on Lake Conroe, and then if you can get out and get the knowledge and what other agencies are doing, what other lakes have done, I believe we can make it a lot safer than it is.
Okay. All right. Well, good deal. Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming in.